Herkese merhaba. Hi everyone. Welcome. My name is Sarp Kerem Yavuz. I am the artistic director of the Contemporary Istanbul Foundation, and I'm really excited to be hosting another edition of Contemporary Istanbul Foundation's Bridges Dialogues programming. I am joining you from Paris, and we have a very exciting guest who's about to join us any minute now by the name of Felix Kwok, who will be talking to us about various developments in contemporary art and the recent sort of trends in Asia. I am going to be adding him now as we speak. Felix, can you hear us? Aha!
Aha, hi.
Hi, how are you?
How are you, Sarp? Very good to see you on
Very
the
good to see
Instagram.
you. Thank you
Yes,
again for taking the time out of a Sunday to join us to chat with us today.
my pleasure.
Is it also Mother's Day where you are? Where are you in the world?
Yes, I just come back from Shenzhen. I'm now at my home in Hong Kong, but I just finished a lovely day trip with my parents in my museum. So they enjoy a lot. It's their first visit.
That's
Yeah, to
amazing.
celebrate the Mother's Day. Yeah.
Well, happy Mother's Day to your mother and to all the mothers who are following us and watching us, and to all the artistically inclined mothers who are making artwork and sharing all of their creativity with us. It is a
Likewise.
it is a pleasure to have you. I have so many questions that I want to ask you, but before we dive into the sort of the general dialogue portion of it, I would love to make sure that everyone watching us today gets a better sense of who you are and where you're coming from. So, if you don't mind, in just a couple of minutes, just running us through what you're doing and how you ended up doing what you're doing, because you have a pretty fantastic story.
Yeah. So, first of all, hello everybody. My name is Felix Kwok. I am the Chief Creative Officer and Deputy Director of Shenzhen Bay Culture Square, which is the cultural landmark which is just opened in last November. This is the second largest museum in Chinese mainland and the world's largest design museum. Prior to the joining of Shenzhen Bay Culture Square, I was the head of modern art of Sotheby's Asia, and I'm also a registered auctioneer of China as well.
You used to work with Nick Buckley Wood, who was on the Bridges programming a few weeks ago, actually, right?
Yes, Nick is a longtime friend, and we also have worked together at Sotheby's for about 4 years.
I would love to kick this off by asking you more about Shenzhen in particular, because I think that especially for our followers in Turkey and in the sort of in the immediate region, Shenzhen is perhaps a new name for them because everyone's sort of familiar with roughly, I suppose, familiar with the art scene in Shanghai and Hong Kong. But if you can tell us what is happening in Shenzhen, how come we didn't know about it as much, but now we're starting to hear about it more and more? What has developed over the last maybe 10 years that has put it on the map?
Well, first of all, Shenzhen is a very young city. I would
Mm.
say the modern life of Shenzhen began in 1980 when it was
Oh, okay.
when it was decided to be a special economic region for People's Republic of China. So it's a very young city. It's just 45 years old, comparing to Hong Kong, Shanghai, let alone Beijing. It's very young. So it's a quickly growing city. It has quickly emerged from a very traditional village to nowadays a surreal tech hub. Of course, with very strong economic development. So accompanied by the economic growth, now what we can see is Shenzheners, and especially the Shenzhen Art Circle, it's looking for their cultural identity as well. I think it is a very typical growth of cultural development when a city or place has gone through a swift and very strong economic growth. Be that in modern Japan, Hong Kong 20 years ago, Shanghai 10 years ago. They are also working on rapid growth from cultural infrastructure, from hardware to software. I think nowadays Shenzhen has already proved to the world that it is one of the most important tech hub, which is second to no others. You can see every day there are new inventions, technological advancement on every single details in people's daily life. So accompanied by the technological breakthrough, Shenzhen is also looking for their cultural identity, especially in comparison with Beijing, Shanghai, Hong Kong, which are neighbor cities with a relatively clearer cultural identity. So especially for this year is a major year for Shenzhen. It is going to be the year of APEC, which will be hosted in the city in 18th to 19th of November. So the city is actively preparing themselves, getting it ready on every single aspect. And of course, the cultural identity is very important. So this year, we are going to be ready to receive at least 5 more museums in Shenzhen to be open. Yeah, though not every single museum is a fine art museum, but there are science museum, tech museum, cultural museum. So the city is getting ready to complete their cultural infrastructure, and of course software will come together and come after. So our Shenzhen Bay Culture Square, it's built to enhance and reinforce the cultural identity of Shenzhen.
Is that where all the museums are going to be located?
Yeah, across the city, quite a few in the downtown, in different districts. So our museum is located at, I would say, the primest location. It is called Shenzhen Bay, which is where the tech enterprises headquarters are. If we just cross the road, we will be seeing Tencent, which means WeChat, and then we have TikTok's headquarters to be ready soon. We have Alibaba, and of course, we have the financial platforms, institutes, being our neighbors as well. So the purpose of building Shenzhen Bay Culture Square is to enhance the cultural identity of Shenzhen as the design hub in China and one of the major design platforms in the world. It is designed by UNESCO in 2008. That Shenzhen is the 6th cultural design capital of the world and the first city of China to be decided as a design hub. So the government of Shenzhen really want to reinforce this. So if we want to become a design hub of China, then we should have a design museum which is dedicated for this purpose. So it was the idea began at around 2020, and then there was a competition for the architectural ideas, and then MAD, led by Ma Yan-song, a very young, emerging, and nowadays much more established Chinese architect, won the competition, and in just about 4 years' time, this huge cultural landmark is very well built. So we were open in last November. And for now, I think we are now 6 months old, so it's still very young museum with a lot of energy.
You mentioned sort of the city's focus on technology, but also the museum's specific sort of proximity to technology. Does that mean that the majority of the artworks we should be expecting to see are they digital artworks? Is there a sort of particular bent towards digital art being produced by the city's artists?
Well, so design is always the keyword of our museum. So we try to make a difference from the typical fine art museum that is which are more frequently seen in different cities. So design looks very, very specific, but if we look into it, it's still a very broad concept. So to be more specific, our museum focus on a few things. So firstly, architecture, because Shenzhen is a completely new city. In the past 45 years, there are many landmarks being constructed. So architecture is one of the key key artistic creation in the history of the city. And then, of course, interior design, furnitures, industrial designs. So we have a very good collection of furnitures from Chinese traditional to Western international contemporary design of furnitures. And then we have graphic design for sure, because Shenzhen used to be what we call the printer of China. So I remember when I had a academic committee meeting with some senior experts who relocated to Shenzhen since 1990, and they remembered what they call the good old days. 30 years ago, they said, you know what, Felix, in 1990s, Shenzhen print all the calendars and
All the
distribute them to the
calendars.
calendars during the paper time, right? In 1990s, everyone would hang beautiful paper calendars with
Right.
movie stars, handsome actor, beautiful actresses, and Shenzhen almost printed every single calendar for the entire mainland China. And you know what? No matter how many copies of calendars we print,
Uh-huh.
we always do the color proof in Hong Kong, because in terms
Wow.
of accuracy, Hong Kong's color proof is much better. So
Mm.
that was a very close collaboration between Hong Kong and Shenzhen from the beginning of the design history of the city till nowadays.
For those of us who are not maybe sure geographically what the proximity is, how far is Shenzhen from Hong Kong?
Literally, you can walk.
You can walk. Oh, okay.
You can walk. You
Okay,
can
great.
walk. Yeah. Yeah. Technically speaking, if I want to go back to Hong Kong, I just need to walk for about 15 minutes
Okay.
to the Shenzhen Bay portal,
Mhm.
and then I just need to swipe my ID card,
Mhm.
and then I can walk back to Hong Kong. Of course, I need to take taxi back to my home, but technically
Sure.
speaking, they are neighboring cities. And besides, graphic design, architectural design, industrial design, we also, of course, have technology,
Mhm.
fashion, jewelry, especially in Shenzhen, since we are a tech hub. So when we talk about design, we did touch on from the beginning of Shenzhen to build the manufacturing industry. So from light industry to high tech industry. So we have cars like BYD, which is based in Shenzhen.
Mhm.
I would say this is a major brand for electric cars. We have watches brands, which manufacture watches for Chinese astronauts that they use in the space. We
Wow.
have we have drones. So in our collection on display, we have a drone for agricultural purpose.
Mhm.
And of course, we have 3D print cement models. So it's a 1 to 120 scale model.
Mhm.
The real one, it's in Xuzhou in another city of China. But we also have 1 to 120 uh, model in our museum. And of course, robots, we have different kind of robots, from human form robots to what we call the cell robots to overcome difficult landscapes. So
Mm.
these are all we focus as well. And also in terms of a more artistic expression, we
Mhm.
also have artists based in Shenzhen. I would say Shenzhen-based artists who create AI art. So
Mhm.
say we have an installation by a Shenzhen-based artist called Shen Xiaomin. He built a robot arms set of installations with robot arms and a mirror, and then they're installed in one of our showroom, and then they dance, and then they look at each other, and then you can see, the mirror is like their face, and they will look at one another and they dance. So it's quite interesting. Yeah, it's
That's
quite a
amazing.
creative. Yeah.
Please send that to us, and we can maybe share it in our stories after this interview is posted too, so that people can see. That sounds incredible.
Yeah, sure.
I would love to. So you talked about how the city's so new and there's so many new museums being created. Is it all just because the government is supporting this, or is there sort of a private sector of maybe like a group of patrons who are also sort of uplifting this endeavor? Is there like a people side to this, or is it all sort of government funded, government sort of vision?
I believe this is a joint effort. So
Mm,
from the government to the state-owned enterprise, to private uh, galleries, commercial sectors, to the general public, and let
mm,
alone the private collectors as well. So it's a joint effort. So for public museum, of course, the government is taking the initiative. So for Shenzhen Bay Culture Square, it is owned by the government,
mhm,
but the operation goes to a state-owned enterprise, which is more effective in the daily operation.
mhm,
So this is quite a commonly seen way of how the new public museums are being operated from Shenzhen to the rest of China. So when we talk about the relatively new museum in Shenzhen, we have SeaWorld, which has been in collaboration with V&A since about 6 years ago. So it is in more or less the same format. So SeaWorld is owned by the government, but it is operated by the Merchant Group, which is a state-owned enterprise.
mhm.
Shenzhen Culture Square, as mentioned, it's owned by the government, and we are operated by China Resources Land, a leading real estate developer. And then there is another new museum which will open soon. Shenzhen International Museum is the name. So it is owned by the government
What will
and
they show?
operated by Poly. So very much it's based on Western international art collection. So
Also,
we
this is a
believe
fine art
this is
museum.
going to,
Okay.
yeah, it's a fine art museum. It's a fine art museum. And like in Shanghai, if we look at the Pudong Museum, which is quite famous nowadays, so they are owned by the government and run by Lu Jiazui Group. So I think this is quite a common practice nowadays.
Mhm. Um, Another question that I have, and I guess we touched upon it briefly, but so you mentioned the relationship with Hong Kong, but I've always been under the impression that Hong Kong has a pretty unique and specific culture, and I'm curious if this proximity means that Shenzhen is sort of absorbing that, or if it's sort of entirely moving in a different design and tech oriented direction. I'd love to sort of understand maybe more about the differences between the two cities, especially if they're so close, in terms of the cultural output.
Well, I think nowadays people are generally accepting the new concept of Greater Bay Area, which
Okay.
comprises what we call 9+2 major cities in South China. So 9 cities from the Guangdong province, including Shenzhen, plus Hong Kong and Macau. So of course, Hong Kong is undeniably the leading cultural hub in Asia, even the world. So it's a very open city. It's a very mature. It has a very mature infrastructure. We apply common law. It's a financial hub. Due diligence, zero tax on art transaction. So it's very good. Every year in March, Hong Kong transformed itself to a big party for all the international collectors and art lovers. So for sure, the vibe of Hong Kong has spread out across the Greater Bay Area. And nowadays, if we look back to the March Art Week in Hong Kong,
Mhm.
we can see a synergy has been created in collaboration with Macau and Shenzhen. So personally speaking, in March during the Art Basel Week, I personally have done 17 art talk in 7 days.
That's a lot.
And what I can do is, because of the geographical convenience, I could finish my art talk in Shenzhen, and then immediately I go back to Hong Kong
That's kind of great. Yeah.
for evening talk. So the craziest moment is, I think, on a Saturday. I believe it should be 28th of March. I wake up in the morning in Shenzhen, and then I head back to Hong Kong for a morning lecture for Tsinghua University. And then at noon, I take ferry to Macau for a Macau Art Biz Symposium. And then I go back to Hong Kong and did a Art Basel talk in the late afternoon. And then by the evening, I'm already at the peak of Hong Kong in the Belgian Consulate General's residence for a midnight talk.
That's that's a lot back to back. That's very impressive, though.
Yeah, so I like the convenience. I like the vibe. It sounds very packed, but in fact, you don't feel that difficult or exhausting because the transportation is very established.
Right, I can imagine. So the infrastructure
Yeah,
is there for you to be able to do this
yeah.
seamlessly. Um, I would love to sort of zoom out a little bit and ask you, in your opinion, both as the director of this extraordinary establishment now, but also coming from the art market and the art world, what do you think people today misunderstand about art coming from China? What are some of the sort of misconceptions that you're hoping to mitigate with these new establishments, these new structures, but also with these talks that you say you're giving? Sort of what are some of the things that drive you crazy, or what are the things that you find funny?
Well, put it this way, let's not interpret it as a misunderstanding,
Okay.
but how should we understand Chinese art and Chinese culture? Because Chinese is a geographically very vast country. From Beijing to Shanghai to Hong Kong, every single city looks completely different. From east to west, from north to south, it already is completely different. And also we have the concept of time. It's a very long history from 3,000 years ago since we invented our Chinese characters to nowadays. We are talking about flying drones for food delivery. It's too much to digest. That's why every single audience of Chinese art or people who have an initial interest in Chinese art and culture would find it probably is too much to digest.
Right.
So yeah, so everyone would have a different first impression. Depends on where they start with. So I believe if we zoom into the concept of contemporary art, we would say in mainland China we started our contemporary art in a more narrow definition since 1980s, when Chinese has gone through a very swift and rigorous change and modernization. And since there is a very rapid growth of the society, so we have different features being seen on the contemporary art scene. So somehow even we just focus on the contemporary art scene is still very difficult for us to completely understand the full picture.
Right.
And put it this way, if we put it back to the art market, let's be more commercial, which is easier to start.
Sure.
At least we can talk about contemporary art by the age of the artists. So nowadays we would say for the artists who were born before 1980s,
right,
they have very much witnessed the more pure socialist society of Chinese mainland. So we could reasonably understand that they have more socialist symbolism in their art because this is part of their life.
Right.
For the artists in born after the 1980s, we would say they have witnessed the rapid economic growth and internationalization of the Chinese mainland. We witness how they how the entire China quickly embraced the entire world by joining WTO, hosting the Beijing Olympic Games, the 2011 World Expo. So it's rapid internationalization, including today. Nowadays we talk about APEC.
Hmm.
So we would say nowadays the contemporary artists who were born after 1980s, their language, it's very much more globalized, less symbolism
Okay.
in,
That's
in
interesting.
their artwork. And of course, needless to say, because they are more internationally trained, they are not necessarily trained by institutions in Chinese mainland. They could study abroad since
Right.
they were so young.
Yeah.
So we would say from subject matter, artistic language, material, a medium, how to handle artistic creation, it's more globalized.
So you would say that if somebody who has no context necessarily goes to, say, an art fair featuring various Chinese artists, you're saying that there would be a distinct sort of difference between a millennial Chinese artist and a more established one.
Yeah,
And we wouldn't
yeah.
necessarily need to know, we need to read the text to be able to say, oh, like this is clearly coming from a different culture. Maybe not a different
Well,
culture, but a different moment.
yeah. I remember back to my auction time. I'm a modern specialist, more on the modern time.
Hmm.
When I spoke to the ultra contemporary specialists, they mentioned that in contemporary art scene, um, we don't really emphasize nationality because it's a global competition. We only care about how good the painters paint instead
Hmm.
of about the nationality, background, or ethnicity. So as far as they can paint a good artwork, he's a good painter. So I think the more ultra contemporary or more contemporary we talk about, the less we would focus on nationality or cultural background. Instead, I think it's more about how important the topic that they could reflect um, the issue of our time,
Hmm.
um, which really are reflecting what are our real questions in the present time, instead of keep reinventing the same wheel.
I
Yeah, and
understand
of
what you
course,
mean.
well, nationality is cultural background is still part of the feature.
Hmm.
If we still want to dig out the ultra contemporary Chinese artists' common feature in their art pieces,
Hmm.
well, probably is a contemporary literati spirit because Chinese has a very long history of literati painting,
Hmm.
and the contemporary younger generation are kind of a common goal or common incentive
Hmm.
to translate it in a contemporary way still.
Sure.
And then brushwork. Of course, nowadays contemporary artists basically paint with oil or acrylic, but still the aesthetic of appreciation of brushwork, like what we did in ink painting,
Of course.
still exists. We still
Yeah.
appreciate the beauty of brushwork. So I would say this is still what we could indicate and differentiate a Chinese contemporary artist from their counterparts from the rest of the world.
That's, I mean, especially what you mentioned about brushwork. That's so interesting because I never think of it in those terms, but there is definitely, I wouldn't maybe say a lack of intentionality, but it doesn't seem like as much of a priority as other things in contemporary Western painting right now. So that's really fascinating to hear.
Yeah.
We're nearing the end of our talk, but if there's anything you would love to add, if there's any artists that are on your radar right now that you think we should be looking at, or any particular institutions or exhibitions you're excited about, please tell us.
Well, I would say I strongly recommend people to visit our show, which is just open by the end of April. So it
Hmm.
is a tapestry show in collaboration with Mobilier National from Paris.
Yeah.
So it's a Chinese-French cultural exchange program in Shenzhen. We have brought 42 national treasure level tapestries from Paris to Shenzhen.
Hmm.
And also we have a special section of Chinese modern and contemporary tapestry for about 15 works together. So it's a great show because it's a mega show because the tapestries are huge.
Hmm.
So comparing to viewing them in the cell phone, if you come in person, you will see the scale and the mass. And in terms of time span, it started from Louis XIV, Louis XV to modern contemporary French, lyrical abstraction,
Wow.
living contemporary artists. So the time span is very, very long. And you can see how the French tapestry production, the manufacturing from decided by the kings to they decide by themselves when there's no kings in France. And then nowadays, these museums still produce furnitures for the French president. So it's a living museum and manufactory.
Right.
And you can see how they transformed themselves to by the commission of king to they need to drive their own operation. And then they work with professional tapestry artists, and then they move on to major modern masters from Picasso, Matisse, Miro, Calder, Le Corbusier. And then when it comes to post-World War II, they also work with Zhao Wuqi, Georges Mathieu, Hans Achtung. It's amazing. It's an amazing collection. So I think it also demonstrates how we try to bring in international content. At the same time, we don't lose our Chinese flavor. So what we try to do with the Chinese section after the French collection is we try to showcase that Chinese also has a very long tradition of producing tapestries. But when it came to the modern time, how the Chinese modern pioneers learned from the world and merge with our own tradition and to produce our modern contemporary tapestries. It's a great show. I strongly recommend people to come and see.
I'm ready to come right now. It sounds amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. It has been such a pleasure getting to know you and learning more about Shenzhen. We are hoping you can make it to Contemporary Istanbul in September as well. And we hope to see you soon.
I look forward to see you all in person in Istanbul. Istanbul is one of my favorite cities. I've been there for twice, so I really look forward to visit you again.
We can't wait. Thank you again.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.